يا أيها الناس كلوا مما في الأرض حلالا طيبا ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين ربي يسر ولا تؤسر وتمم بالخير. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, please make it easy for us and don't make it difficult for us, and enable us to take it to completion with goodness and with khair, inshallah. So yesterday we discussed about asbab, the reasons for prohibition. From the broad spectrum of halal, what are the reasons that make something as haram? We discussed about an-nas ash-shar'i, that a textual evidence from the Quran and Sunnah. We discussed about an item or the element belonging to the category of khaba'is, the repulsive things, or it belonging to the intoxicants, or it belonging to the najasa, the impurity, and other factors. So today, inshallah, we'll be expanding upon one of the factors from those 10, which is najasa. So inshallah, today we will discuss about the categories of najasa, how it transfers, and other aspects related to it. This particular topic would be divided in two parts. So today we will discuss the types and so on, and tomorrow we will discuss the cleaning approaches, how to remove najasa. That would be our focus for tomorrow, inshallah. So let's begin. We discussed that najasa could be of two types. One is najisul ain, which is impurity in itself, and the other one is mutanajjis, which is basically contaminated because of coming in contact with something najis. This is something that we have already discussed and studied. Now, in terms of categorizations and types of najasa, so it has been classified by scholars in different ways. Shafi'i scholars, for example, divide it in three categories. Okay, and this is also what is part of MS 1500, the Malaysian Halal standard. It categorizes the najasa into three types: najasa mughallaza, which is severe impurity, and then najasa mutawassita, which is the intermediate or medium level impurity, and najasa khafifa. On the other hand, Hanafi scholars categorize them into ghaliza, najasa ghaliza, and najasa khafifa. These are the two categories according to the Hanafi scholars. Now, you would notice that there is this middle category missing from the Hanafi classification. And what happens as a result is that many of the things that Shafi Fuqaha put in this middle category are transferred to this Ghaliza category according to the Hanafi scholars. So that is why when you read one book or the other book, sometimes you would find a little bit of a difference of agreement regarding whether a type of najasa is mughallaza or ghaliza, or it belongs to mutawassita. The next aspect that we want to study is that we will expand upon each of these types of najasa. So najasa mughallaza, for example, it's the heaviest category of impurity, as we can see over here, and it's intrinsically impure, as we saw yesterday, and it's permanently impure. No amount of washing, no amount of cleaning, no amount of scrubbing would render it as pure or tahir. Anything that is derived from it remains impure as well. And anything that comes out of that animal is impure as well, including its saliva and so on. Now let's see what are the things about which scholars have ijma, consensus, and about what things they have difference of opinion. So all the scholars have got agreement that swine or khinzir, it is najisul ain. It is of mughallaza category, the severe najasa. So it's flesh, bone, hair, derivatives, and all bodily emissions are considered as severe impurity. Now, in this relation, we have to keep in mind that it's not just the flesh, it's about its hair and derivatives and so on as well. Nowadays, its hair are used in various brushes and so on and so forth. So we have to be very careful regarding what we are buying does not have any of this najasanain. Now, where do they have difference of agreement? The difference of agreement is about the dog. So Shafi'i, Hanbali, and Hanafi scholars view that dog and its saliva are classified as heavy impurity, mughallaza. But Maliki scholars, they generally have got little bit of more lenient approach towards the dogs in general. So they believe that living dog itself is pure, and uh, licked item still has to be washed as per the Sharia, but that's more ritualistic rather than it being najisul ain. So there's a disagreement among the scholars with regards to dogs. Now we come to the second category, which is najasa mutawassita, and it is basically a catch-all category. So whatever is not in the mughallaza category, it's basically to catch it. And in this, there are things like al-maita, that the dead animals and so on, which have not been slaughtered and they have died. Now we can make use of some of their items, which we will inshallah study later on, potentially tomorrow when we discuss about using their skin. Similarly, the various types of abnormal discharges from the body, human body, like vomit, pus, and certain types of other discharges from the reproductive organs come into this category as well. Human waste comes in this, animal waste comes in this, and flowing blood comes into this category as well. So that's najasa mutawassita, and if it falls on something, that object can be purified, that subject can be cleaned. If it falls on a surface, that surface can be cleaned. Unlike najasolain, which no amount of washing can render clean. So if you wash this mutawassita najasa off, then the surface would be rendered clean. Now, what do scholars have ijma upon, and what is on which there is a difference of agreement? So all the scholars agree that flowing blood, the masfuh, and human excretions and dead bodies, meta, they are all considered as najasa. And there are certain exceptions to that, which we will inshallah study when we get to their parts. For example, sea animals and so on, their dead is pure and clean. So we will discuss about that when we get to the aquatic side of things and so on. On what there is khilaf or difference of opinion. So some of the human reproductive excretions, according to the Hanafi view, they are considered as najasa ghaliza. Shafi'i and Hanbali view consider it as pure. So if it's on clothing, you can rub it off and then one can pray in that. And there's a hadith to this effect as well. And Maliki view is that they consider that impure as well. Now, about alcohol. This is a very important topic because alcohol nowadays, not the Hummer, but alcohol is a broader category. It's used in a lot of different substances nowadays. So, can it be applied on the body or not? It's in perfumes and so on. Can those perfumes be used or not? Can those body sprays be used or not? Can vanilla flavor be used or not? We will discuss it in a lot of detail, inshallah, when we get to lesson 7, which is about intoxicants, or potentially lesson 8, because I am thinking of switching the topic of istihlak, bringing it forward and doing it before discussing the intoxicants. So inshallah we will soon be discussing it in detail, but one thing to keep in mind for now is that there are various ahadiths which explain the khamr, how was it made in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When it was banned, it was made from certain substances which have been listed in the ahadith. So if any alcohol is made from those substances, scholars unanimously consider that as haram. So they consider it not only as haram but also najis. But if it's made from any other substances, then according to Imam Abu Hanifa, it is pure. It can be touched. It's haram to drink if it intoxicates. So, but it does not if it does not result in intoxication in smaller amounts, and if it is touched, then it is not haram to touch. So that is his position, and many of the modern fatawas are actually based on this opinion. And inshallah, we will discuss more about it when we get to the topic of intoxicants and we will present the comparative overview in detail. Now, this third one is very important as well. The industrial alcohol, the chemicals, which are not manufactured through any of these elements. So they are considered as pure to touch by almost all scholars. We will inshallah discuss about them later on, inshallah. Now, where is with regards to the khafifa, the minor impurity, the Shafi'i scholars restricted only to the baby boy's urine, meeting four specific criteria, which we will discuss on the next slide. Whereas in the Hanafi fiqh, certain other elements are added to that as well. For example, urine of halal to eat animals, e.g., sheep, cattle, and so on, which some of the other schools consider as pure. If there is that animal dropping somewhere, then it does not leave that place as najis according to other schools. And this thing, umum al balwa, basically this is widespread use of something from which it's impossible to safeguard oneself from. So there have been certain fatwa issues based on this, but inshallah we will discuss it in its relevant chapter. Now, these are the four things about the baby boy's urine. Baby girl's urine is different because of its different chemical composition, or wallahu alam, the reason for it being prohibited and not the baby boy's is different. It's still considered najasa, but it's considered as najasa khafifa. And what needs to be done in that regard is that first it should be urine, not the other excretions, and it must be from a baby boy, must be aged 2 years or younger, and that boy should not be eating anything else apart from having mother's milk. And if it falls, then what you need to do is that you have to either put water through it so that it goes away with water, or sprinkle water in large amounts and so on. That is the way to purify it. Still, you have to purify, but it's considered najasa khafifa. Now that's a comparative matrix where the different opinions are summarized. Dog saliva and hair, it's considered as najasa according to the Shafi'i, Hanbali, and Maliki schools. Shafi'i, Hanbali, and Hanafi schools, and considered by Maliki schools that tahir. Now you might think that why do they consider it tahir? Why do they think that it's najasa is metaphorical? Keep that question burning, because inshallah I'll shortly explain the answer to that. Human semen, for example, considered as tahir by Shafi'i and Hanbali schools. Hanafi school consider it as najasa ghaliza, and Maliki school also consider it as najasa. Urine of halal animals is considered as najasa mutawassita by Shafi school, considered as pure by Hanbali school, and Hanafi school considered as khafifa. Maliki school also considered as tahir. Khamar, we'll discuss it in more detail inshallah tomorrow, so or when we get to that lecture, so please hold on this thought till that time. Exceptions, marine and insect life. So certain insects have been considered pure, like locusts and so on, and the dead fish are there are narrations according to which the companions ate them as well, so it's allowed as well. It's not najasa, it's maita is allowed. And about insects, inshallah, we've got a full lecture in which we will detail more about it. And trace amounts are forgiven as well. For example, if one washes or cleans themselves from after going to the toilet and so on, and if they clean themselves with, for example, soil or tissues nowadays, and then some very small traces of najasa still remain on the body, then the person would not be considered as unable to pray, or being in the state of najasa. So those very small trace amounts are allowed, because Islam does not want to put a lot of hardship on people. And certain benign fluids like human sweat, tears, saliva, they are considered as pure as well. Now, I ask you to keep this question burning in your mind, that could najasa be metaphorical, or when it's mentioned in the Quran and Hadith that something is najas, it means that all of it is physically najas. So here's an example. Now this is donkey, and about donkey it's mentioned in Sahih Muslim, Inna Allaha wa Rasulahu yanhanikum, that Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his messenger, they both prohibit for you an luhumil humuri, that they forbade eating the meats of donkeys. فَإِنَّهَا رِجْسٌ, because that meat is rijs or najis. So both of these are used as synonyms for impurities. So both of them are najis, najasa. Kala, then the narrator said, فَأُكْفِيَتْ فَأُكْفِيَتِ الْقُدُورُ بِمَا فِيهَا. So the pots were turned upside down and with whatever was in it. So they were cooking some meat on the day of Battle of Khaybar, and they had some donkey meat in that, and it was poured over it because it was announced that it is najis. But see this other hadith, which is also from Sahih Muslim, and it is after the demise of the Prophet ﷺ. It means that it was not abrogated. It was after the demise of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is about Ibn Umar Raziyallahu an, and what was he doing? He had a donkey which he used for ride, and he had a turban on his head from which he was protecting himself from the desert dust and so on and sand and so on. And he saw someone, and then he got off his ride and offered his ride to that person. And the turban, which is considered as a sign of one's respect and one's honor, he put off his turban and put it on that person. And people asked that this donkey that you were using as your ride, it was giving you ease in this difficult journey. You gave it to that person, and now you don't have any right. Why did you do that? And your honor, your turban, you gave to that person as well. Then he gave a very beautiful statement, which is the finest act of goodness is the kind treatment of a person to the loved ones of his father after his death. So this incident happened after the death of Umar Zitala an. And the father of this person was a friend of Umar. So that person's father was friend of Ibn Umar's father. So they were both friends. So that is why Ibn Umar Zitala an respected that person. But our point of interest is there are many things that we can learn from this hadith, including the akhlaq, including honoring the guest, including loving those who your father loved, and so on. But today, our point of interest in this hadith is that he was riding a donkey. Over here, it is mentioned that it is najis. So it does not mean that if a meat of something is considered as najis, the whole thing is rendered as najis. So therefore, certain things, certain scholars consider to be najasa in metaphorical sense rather than physical sense. Example we saw from the Maliki scholars, and the more we will see about it when we get to the chapter on intoxicants, inshallah, and we will see what different schools of thought say about it, which of them consider it as najis, which of them do not consider it as najis, which of them, which is most of them, allow its external use, for example, in external medication or cleaning the wounds and so on, or perfumes and cosmetics and so on. We will discuss all about that, inshallah, when we get to that chapter. But the objective of this slide was to show that some of the things could be najis metaphorically. Now, how does najasa transfer? So one of the things is that there are tahir subjects. If they can come in contact with najisul ain, then they can become mutanajis if certain conditions are met. So one of the things to keep in mind about this is that we should not become too much paranoid. Islam does not want us to be in hardship all the time and be paranoid about things all the time. Islam does not want that. So we have to have some level of confidence and trust and not be consumed by waswasa all the time, by consumed by worry all the time. So this hadith shows an example. So there was a woman, a companion, a female companion. She came to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, "Inna lana tariqan ila al-masjidi muntinatan." That on our way to the masjid, there is some sort of najasa that comes on the way. فَكَيْفَ نَفْعَلُ إِذَا مُطِرْنَا? How should we act then if it is rain, if we are rained upon, if it rains, what should be our conduct? Because that najasa would become then wet, and that's what we'll see on the next slide. Wet najasa can transfer. So this shows that wet najasa can transfer. She was not worried when it was dry, but when it becomes wet, she was worried about its transfer. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أليس بعدها طريق? That after that, is not there any way هي أطيب منها, that is cleaner than it? قالت, she said, قلت, that female companion said, Bala, indeed there is. Qala, فَهَذِهِ بِهَذِهِ, then that is for this thing. So it means that what comes after it purifies it. So the thing would get in contact with the the sand, the dry sand, and so on, and then that would render it as pure. So we should not be like too much consumed that maybe something has stuck on my clothing and being worried about it all the time. So Islam says do not be too much consumed about these things because we have got a bigger goal, bigger objective in life. Islam has given us a big mission, the mission of Shahada al Nas, being witness upon the mankind. And that mission is so huge that we cannot be consumed all the time in worries and waswasa and little nitty gritties. So the Prophet said, do not worry. What comes after it cleans it. Or kama kala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, with this context, let's move on to the ways of transfer. Generally, when the two objects are dry, the najasa is not considered to have transferred. This is to remove the waswasa. If you are assuming that there might be some najasa in here, but I can't see, so don't be worried about it. If it's dry, don't worry. And if you see the najasa visibly and it comes in contact with a tahir substance while one of them is wet, then the najasa would transfer and you would need to see the signs of najasa and then it's considered as transferred. Same is the case with this one. If you visibly see the najasa and you see that it's stuck onto a tahir substance, then it would be considered as najis. But when it's dry, then scholars give leeway in that relation. And one of the reasons for that is what we saw in the previous slide about that hadith. And there are some other evidences for that as well. So these are the modes of transfer. If one of them is wet, slash damp. Dampness is considered the same as wetness. For example, there was a knife that was cutting pork, and that knife was not sort of like had liquids on or wet as such, but it was damp with the fats of that pork or with that moisture from it. Then it is still under the same ruling. If that knife is used for cutting a piece of halal meat, then that halal meat would be considered as najis as well. So this is what we explained. For example, generally it happens in pizza shops. They use knives. Sometimes they just clean them or wipe them, but it does not always render it clean. There might be still traces, and when it comes in contact with the halal pizza and halal cheese, that is contaminated as well. And there are some other examples. I'll just leave them on this slide. You can read at your own. It's about the means of transfer as well. Now, in the industry, again, one has to be very careful. A lot of these things, they are not just hypothetical things, they have got real life applications in the industry. For example, on this particular slide, you can see that at the raw material stage, there could be certain processing aids used that could result in contamination. The production equipment, if it's made of the porous material like wood or any plastic that has got pores in it, then that would not be suitable for halal production. That is why the halal standards or halal auditors generally require stainless steel equipment so that they do not have pores, they do not keep the impurities trapped in them, and they are purified by cleaning. Similarly, if they are shared facilities, then we have to have a very thorough cleaning standards, and we will discuss more about cleaning standards tomorrow, inshallah. Then we discussed about the moisture rule. So should we do wet cleaning or dry cleaning? How should we do the packaging? What about the condensation? What about the transportation? And is there any possibility of wet substance release? For example, if they're transferring halal and non-halal substances together, then if there is any melting or leakaging, then this wet substance can result in transfer of impurities. So those aspects about impurity transfer that we studied are extremely important in that regard. Same is the case with storage. So halal auditors, when they go to the industries, some of their tasks is to see the storage and whether there is a dry to dry contact or dry to wet contact. They look at all these things, and then based on that, once they are satisfied that the criteria is being met, then they consider something as halal. If the purity is localized and it's not spread, then you can remove the immediate surroundings of that impurity, and then the rest of the batch is considered as clean. Whereas it fell into some liquid, then that whole liquid has become impure unless certain other conditions are fulfilled, which we will inshallah discuss tomorrow or the day after. So this is the overall aspect. So the product is tahir once all these aspects are met. Once it is verified that the raw materials were pure, the processing aids were not contaminated, the, the line was sanitized and ritually pure, preventing the substance from becoming mutanajjis, and the moisture was controlled, and the transfer mechanisms were put in check. So once these things are met, then the product is considered to have been halal certified, inshallah. So with this we conclude, inshallah, and tomorrow we will discuss about the types of cleaning mechanisms for purifying the najasa, and then we will do a very important topic called istihlaq, and after that we will discuss about um, intoxicants, inshallah. So أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.